Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and unfortunately, I am not going to be reviewing John Wick Chapter 4 today, and the reason is actually pretty hilarious. So, early on in the day, there was a huge, moving truck, and it just parked behind our cars, and so we couldn't get out until 2 o'clock. And at that point, I had already made my lunch, and so I just finished eating that and just kind of relaxing, because, you don't want to do anything after you just ate, or else you'll get sick. And especially if it's mac and cheese, because sometimes mac and cheese could give me some stomach acid problems. And so now it's 3:30, and the movie's 3 hours long. So if I spent all that time at the theater and then I reviewed it and edited it, it would just be, I think, too late in the day, especially with basketball on. It's gonna be so. I'm thinking about seeing it tonight and then reviewing it tomorrow. So, I know it's kind of disappointing. Oh, another day where I don't review John Wick Chapter 4. Whatever. So I am here to do the review that I promised to do when I reviewed the Your Honor Season 2 finale, which was a terrible, terrible episode of television. I am here to review Season 2. So, right off the bat, Season 1 was a huge mixed bag. It started off with a really good premise, and the first couple episodes were really good, really brutal, and intense, and uncomfortable, and it felt like even though there's a lot of coincidences here going on, this is a really high-quality show with high-quality characters and high-quality drama. And then came Part 5. Part 5 turned into complete trash with side stories dealing with a character named Eugene. And then, it just it was very up and down from then on. They'd have a really good moment where Bryan Cranston would do something cool, and then they'd have a really boring 10-minute long sequence where something stupid happens, and what ended up happening by the end of the first season was that the coincidences started piling up, and in the finale it was the ultimate string of coincidences that led to the main character's son getting killed. And it's just a very, very bizarre finale. It's very bad, but it's not terrible. I mean, it's not as terrible as the Season 2 finale. So, overall, Season 1 was a mixed bag. It had a lot of potential. It had a lot of great characters, and, I really wanted to see more, because it felt like there were all these unresolved stories that it's oh, you're not going to go into that, but you're going to talk about it. You're not going to go into that either. It just didn't make sense. It felt like this is the equivalent of having dinner and then saying, I'm not going to eat the rest of this food that's left over. I'm just going to throw it in the trash. Instead of having leftovers, no, just throw it away. That's what it felt like with this show. So when Season 2 came out, it was very exciting that they would finally, continue the story and hopefully go on until it naturally resolves. Or until they want to resolve it, because I don't care. I could watch Your Honor for 10 seasons. I don't care. And it started off on a really good foot. It started off with the slow burn, dark episode that felt like it was, I don't know, it was pretty dark, and it was pretty, it was harder to watch than expected, and it felt like this season is going to be really, really good, because there were all these characters that they were setting up into their places on the chessboard. They added this new character named Olivia, and she really likes to go around talking to people. And what else did they do? Oh yeah, well, in part one, things already started off on a weird place, because Eugene, they have in the summary, he is aided by unlikely benefactors. And it's like, no, he actually just gets away himself, and he manages to escape after coincidence, to the point of where it's like a cartoon. And it's really sad, because you really want these characters to get Eugene for killing Adam, and you want the Baxter family to succeed at this point. But he gets away, and that's basically the whole fucking season. I mean, that's the frustrating thing, is that when it all comes down to it, you could literally say that season 2 is all about Eugene getting away with everything. Like, you could probably just take Michael out of the story. Like, you could just write him off of this story, and then at the very end have him give Lee that one clue that she needed, and that would be it. Like, you didn't even have to have Michael on the show. Like, because all the plot lines that they were building up, where he was supposed to be taking down Jimmy, he was supposed to be taking down Charlie, he did solve his wife's murder, at least, in one episode. He was supposed to be doing all these stuff, taking care of Fia and her baby, before she runs off to some other father figure. And it ended up where he doesn't really do anything except for help Eugene. And it's like, why? Like, it just, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to think about this season with the finale in mind. So let's pretend like the finale doesn't exist, because the finale is just, it ruins everything. I mean, everything that came before it, it's like, wow, this is so much better, so much better. And in general, I felt like the writers had taken all the criticisms into mind for the most part, and it felt like they really wanted to improve, and that they did better with character, they did better with storylines, with in general, just having less coincidences. You know, season 1, a big problem with it was how many coincidences there were that led to the storylines happening. But they have one big issue that I don't know if other people will agree or not. The people who made this season, they had a big problem with pacing. With pacing the story out, and with structuring the storylines, how they would go here and there, and where the characters would go here and there. And it was very uneven. It was like you're walking on a rocky road, up and down hills, and it's just all uneven, and it's a mess. So that was a big issue, was that, part 1, it seemed like, wow, what are we going to be building to? And then part 2, it was like, it was just like a complete deflation, and just a slowing down, and part 3 was slow, and part 4 was slow, and part 5 was slow. And it was like, where is this going? Is this going to go anywhere soon? Like, it has to just be uh, a slow burn, like a slower burn than you've ever seen before. Well, I don't know about that. There's been some slower burns, but in general, this season was slow. And it turned a lot of people off. People said all these stupid things like, why is the show still going? There's all these storylines to do, but why is it still going? And it's like, yeah, fuck off. And so that is a downside of this season, is that for all the slow pacing, it kind of proves these people right who say that TV shows shouldn't go on for like more than 2 seconds, because if there's any slow episodes ever, they will complain. Like, if there's any episodes where it feels like it's filler to them, or it feels like they're taking time to build character, these people will complain, because they have been conditioned by the people who made Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul to say that anything that goes past a certain point is overstaying its welcome. And so the fact that the show did have some slow episodes, I don't very much mind it. I'm just saying in general that was their weakness in terms of writing, and especially in terms of Eugene and the whole Desire King subplot, which was terrible for the most part. Eugene, he gets taken to Texas, and he's got this whole new family. He goes to school somehow, and he just sits around drawing pictures of his crimes like an idiot, and and he just gets away with everything, but nothing really happens here in Texas with him. It's all about just waiting for an excuse for him to get back to New Orleans. And then he gets back to New Orleans, and he does some more stupid shit, and he just slips and slithers away, and he betrays his friend who helped him save his life, and then he gets shot one time in the shoulder, even though the shooter was like 1 foot away from him. And then he has this whole thing in part 17 or episode 7 where he has Lee that comes to his rescue, and for the rest of the season he just makes Lee his bitch, and she just rescues him with everything, and she helps him with everything, and it's just ridiculous. It's like this woman has to have some sort of a bizarre connection to him because it makes no sense. Like, he is a killer, and this whole thing where he's like, I don't want any prison time, I don't want any punishment, I don't have to have any of that. And it's like, yeah, okay, it's really shitty. And then finally, of course, he gets away at the end, and the biggest thing that he has to suffer, the biggest consequence that he has to suffer, is that he won't ever be called Eugene Jones again. He'll have a new name because he's under witness protection. And it's like, yeah, Adam is never going to live again. So I think that's worse than not being called Eugene Jones ever again. So the whole Eugene story was a fucking disaster. I mean, it was a huge, huge disaster this season, for the fact that it literally became a cartoon to me as a reviewer, to just every episode, oh, there's Eugene just slipping under the radar again, he not paying any consequences, not having to deal with any of the bad things that he did. Oh, look, there he just slips away again. Oh, he got arrested. Oh, who cares, because he's just going to get away with it by the end. And then that's exactly what happens. But if I had to criticize one major thing, it was just how badly they handled his story earlier on in the season, where he's in school and he's just drawing pictures of his crimes, even though that could be used as evidence. And even though he's a wanted man, and he's drawing pictures of his crimes, fucking idiotic can you get? Instead of doing that, they should have had more stuff go on with him in Texas. You know, they should have had some sort of conflict there with the character Roderick. They introduced this whole new villain, and his name is Roderick, and they had this whole storyline where he wanted money in exchange for giving the Desire Gang pure drugs, because the Desire Gang's drugs were killing people, and it was bad for business. It was bad all the way around. So Roderick was going to help with that, and there was this whole conflict with the money. Where's the money? Where's the money? They really should have played that up, and they should have made that a conflict. You know, there's this part that is so laughably stupid. It's just the worst thing in the whole season, besides the finale, which that's worse all by itself. There's this part where Eugene takes the money, he disappears like the Grinch, and he just suddenly shows up on the Desire Gang's doorstep like hours later. And so somehow he ran from Texas all the way to New Orleans in a couple of hours, which I think is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And it's not like they showed him riding the bus or anything. Like, no, he just teleports to this woman's doorstep, and it's just the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And instead of doing that, they could have had another episode where it's just all about him getting from Texas to New Orleans, and it's like a chase. It's like a back and forth. You know, that could have been really, really good. But instead, he just teleports because he's Mr. Plot Convenience. So I think that we have established that the Eugene storyline is complete trash, and that his character is still a huge joke, and he did have a couple of redeeming moments, like where he apologizes in the finale, but in general, it doesn't really feel like he cares that much, because then you have another episode where he's like, there's nothing for me in New Orleans anymore, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, are you serious? Like, that's just complete BS. That's completely, no. Sorry, but I'm not buying that. And then there's another moment, of course, the moments where he's in the prison room with Lee, the lawyer, and he's telling her, I don't want to serve any prison time. I don't want to do that. I don't want to say that I killed Adam. I don't want to do that. It's just, it comes off as so cringeworthy, because it's like he just doesn't care. It's like he has no remorse at all, and that, you know, even when he says sorry at the end, it's kind of like he's just doing that because he feels bad for Michael, not for the fact that he killed Adam in cold blood. It was very cold. So, okay, we're done with the Eugene story. I don't even want to talk about Eugene anymore. Like, if the show is permanently over, at this point, I will at least be glad to not talk about Eugene anymore. Because they really, like, I've never seen a character with that much plot armor and with that much just inability to face any consequences or any sort of conflict in general. Like, there's no point in the whole season where he faced any sort of conflict, except for the best episode, which was episode 7. But even then, it was kind of like, So I guess next up we should talk about okay, let's talk about the Desire Gang story, because that's a disaster too. So this season is all focused around how Big Mo, she is in love with this singer at this dance club, and then she buys the club because she wants to be around the singer all the time, and she wants to, watch her all day long, like the penguin at the Iceberg Lounge. And at the same time, there's a war brewing between the Desire Gang and the Baxters. And they talked about this, even in the trailers and the previews. They discussed that really the main focus of this season was that the Baxters were going to go to war with Desire, because this dance club is across the street from the hotel that the Baxter family owns. So there's inevitable conflict there. And then there's some issues with the drugs and with Little Mo. And what ends up happening is that the story turns into kind of like a character study on the leader, Big Mo. And Big Mo is a very evil person, and she doesn't care about her own family, and she is perfectly okay with killing them, with torturing them. She doesn't give an F that they're related to her at all. In fact, it seems like the only person she cares about is her love interest. And then they start to have these really stupid back and forth misunderstandings with them, where the love interest will walk in on something and it'll be like, oh no, you weren't supposed to see that, oh no. And it's like, yeah, who cares? So it turns out that they have this agreement that they won't talk about the criminal stuff that she does, and then in exchange for that she'll date her, and as long as she doesn't talk to her about the criminal stuff, which I find pretty funny. And then Big Mo wants to propose to her to get married, and when she proposes, she says, well, now that we're going to get married, I don't want to have to hide anything from you at all, and I want you to know about all the criminal stuff that I do, because that's just the other side of me, so you gotta love all of me. And it's like, ugh, really, really rotten, unlikable character. A villain, a true villain. And she really deserved to either get killed as a character or have her girlfriend get killed in front of her in some way. And there was this scene where it felt like they were going to do that. They were in part 18, aka episode 8. They have this big thing in the summary where it says Big Mo's triumphant opening night takes an unexpected dark turn. And the dark turn that they're referencing is that this rebellion in her Desire Gang, they rob and they steal from one of their safe houses all of the drugs and money. And that's the unexpected dark turn. And no, fuck that. Instead of that, it should have been the girlfriend gets killed in front of her, and then she thinks that Gina did it, and then that would lead to other things. But they don't do that. And by the end of the season, they have this really retarded thing happen where Little Mo, his character, becomes complete trash, because he comes back to Big Mo after she nearly beats him to death and puts him out onto the street, and he becomes her loyal servant again and her right-hand man. And then she also forges an alliance with Gina, and her club is perfectly safe, and the only thing that she lost The whole season was her love interest. So basically, Big Mo didn't have to suffer any consequences for her actions. The Desire Gang is just as strong as ever because I have no clue. Like, that was really bad. But overall, I would say that I did like some stuff with her. I did like some stuff with how they were showing just how much she didn't care about her own family, but then she cared about this stupid singer girl who was hardly in the show. So I kind of liked that whole story that they did until they ruined it at the end. Okay, now that we're done with the Desire Gang, let's go to the other side of the picture. Let's talk about the Baxter family. Throughout this season, it focused to me a lot on the relationships between Jimmy and his daughter, and then Jimmy and his wife. And there was some interesting stuff with that. All the stuff with the Baxter family was pretty interesting at certain points, and it was very enjoyable to see. At certain points, it felt like it was going to build to something really dark, especially in this one episode where Fia and Carlo, who are the two kids, they discuss killing their parents. And there's this whole deal with Fia doesn't want to get her son baptized, but then she decides to get him baptized just to appease her parents. And to me, I kind of felt like that was going to be the event that they led up to. And then at the baptism, it would turn into a bloodbath. And the two kids would kill their parents. And they would take over the family business or something. That would have been really, really cool. Like, that would have been really, really, like, next level awesome. Or maybe if there was a whole episode where it was just the two of them plotting their murder at this hotel and having to, get past the guards and, create some sort of a foolproof plan to do it in a way where it won't arouse suspicion. They could have done so many cool things with that, but instead, Carlo, he hardly does anything this whole season except for get in a couple of messy situations at the very worst. And then at the end, he kind of becomes a puppet for his mom, and he becomes the new Jimmy in a way. Fia, her character was really good because it felt like she brought on this baby that she had without Adam. And it felt like that she and the baby were going to be the heart of the season for Michael, and the relationship between them would just get stronger and stronger, and then something bad would happen, or something would happen where Michael would have to protect them and protect the baby, and it would be really, really good. And it felt like they were building to that in episode 7, where at the very end of the episode, she is on Michael's doorstep with the baby, and it was like, uh-oh. That was the feeling that I got. It wasn't like, oh, just business as usual after that. But there was also this really interesting storyline to deal with Jimmy as a character, which I really liked. In the past season, the whole draw to the story was that Michael's son accidentally killed the son of a very vicious mafia boss. And it didn't really feel like he was that vicious. He stabbed a grapefruit, he killed a pet bird, and that was it. He really didn't do very much in season 1 to make himself look like he was a hardcore gangster. Well, then in season 2, they did something really interesting where they embraced that and they said, oh, you know what? Well, he's actually kind of like a puppet gangster, and he's really kind of nutless, and he can't really do the dirty work himself, and he's not the person you thought he was in season 1, or the person that they wanted you to think that he was. And it was funny too, because all the people who criticized and got mad because I said that Jimmy wasn't a real gangster, they all got proven wrong in this season. And Jimmy himself, he turns into this really sympathetic character where he almost turns straight, I guess you could say, and he realizes he's being investigated, and he stops doing everything that's illegal, and he sort of grows up, and he's taking responsibility for most of the things that he's done, and I don't know, it just seemed like he made a very strong character shift, and then he got rid of his right-hand man too, who was kind of doing everything for him. And then, of course, at the very end, God, fucking show, he gets shot by Hector, and Hector, this seasoned, like, really, really evil Italian mafia guy, he just straight up like walks down a hotel hallway and shoots Jimmy, and then just expects to get away with that, or he doesn't care. And it's all because Gina set it up, and eye roll. And then he goes to prison, and then Jimmy is alive at the end, I guess. That was really stupid too, because it's just, okay, let's not talk about the finale. Let's not talk about that terrible episode. And then Fia, she starts to have this weird relationship with the priest who's gonna do the baptism. And she talks to him about like Christianity and stuff, and she ends up being disillusioned by both Michael and Jimmy because they both lied to her. And so she takes her own baby and she gives it to the priest to give away, and then she runs off, I guess. They don't really say. That was terrible. That was really, really bad. I will say that's probably the worst thing about the whole season. I mean, it doesn't make any sense in any way, shape, or form. It's complete trash. That was one of the worst things I've ever seen. It just felt like, oh, she's got to do something. We couldn't have her do the cool thing where she would team up with Carlo to kill their parents and take over. So we're going to have her give her baby away and then drive in a car and cry. And I'm shaking my head as I'm talking about this. So another thing, well, okay, I guess the Baxter family, I'm kind of done with them. Well, I'm not done with them in regards to Michael, but I'm done with them in regards to their personal stuff that they had going. Oh yeah, and they added in Hector from Breaking Bad onto the show. And he started off as somebody who, he might be a really cool character too. It's bad enough that Michael has to worry about Jimmy and Gina and Carlo and Fia. Now he's got to worry about Hector from Breaking Bad. Hector comes on and he just kind of hangs out in the background like wallpaper, and he he talks about the christening and or what do they call it? Christening, baptism? I don't really care. Is it wait? Is it baptism or Christmasing? I don't know. That's all he kind of does, though. And then he kind of questions Jimmy's authority, and he kind of questions who Jimmy is as a gangster. And it just felt like that character, the way that they integrated him into the show, was kind of weak, especially when it came to the last couple episodes where, I don't know, it really doesn't seem like, again, like he's a real gangster, because he was all talk and no action, except for when the plot needed him to do something, like where he shot Jimmy in the hallway out in the open. So, now we are finally on to the main character, Michael. Michael has a very, very mixed bag of a story, to say the least, this season. At first, he just wants to die. But then Olivia, she comes in and she wants to talk to him. And she takes him out of prison so that he can help her with Jimmy. And he says, "You gotta go talk to Jimmy and find out what's going on with his crime family." And he's like, "I don't want to do that." And then episode 2, "Michael, what have you been doing with Jimmy? Have you been doing anything important? Have you been discovering any secrets?" "I don't want to do that. F off." Episode 3, "Michael, it's Olivia again. I want you to do something now." And then he's kind of trying to infiltrate them by doing this meat packing job meat delivery job where he delivers meat to the hotel. He doesn't deliver any meat to any female characters in the season, though. He gets told by the family that he's got to stay away from them, even though it was really weird. Like, why are they acting like that to him? Like, it's his grandson that he should be allowed to see, and so that was all really weird. And then episode 4, "Michael, you have to go to this party. The Baxter family is going to have a party, and you're invited. You'll make sure that you'll take Charlie with you." And so he goes to this party. Nothing kind of happens at this party. I mean, at first it seems like this big stuff happens, but then they kind of undo everything that they did when Jimmy is going to kill him for no reason, and they almost discovered his bug. And then in part 5, he throws the cell phone away, and then Olivia shows up and she's like, "Michael, what are you doing? Why did you throw your piece of government property in the puddle? I had to get wet when I get the cell phone out of the puddle." And yes, that is how she sounds on the show. I'm not exaggerating. And then he's like, "F you. I'm not doing anything for you anymore." And she's like, "Oh, you want to play the big boy game?" And then she brings in Nancy, a detective from season 1. She finally kind of plays into the story. She's just kind of heartbroken over Michael, and she's mad at him for lying to her. And she basically leads him into investigating his wife's death, finally. And in one episode, him and Elizabeth, whose house he's staying at, him and her team up like Batman and Robin, and they solve the the case of his wife's death in just one single episode. And then in the next episode, Michael deals with, episode 7 is just a masterpiece, so I'm not even going to really, in episode 7, shit hits the fan on all fronts. And there's nothing wrong with episode 7 in any way, shape, or form. And what do you know, episode 7 is one of the episodes where Olivia is not on the show. And then episode 8, Olivia comes back again and she's like, Michael, I want to talk to Fia because you won't help me, so I will get to Fia to help me. And then Fia won't help her. And then Michael's like, okay, I'll help you. I will talk to somebody. And they actually had this really cool parallel going on in part 9 where you had these different people questioning different people, and their methods were all varying degrees of trash. But then Michael actually got into a car with Carlo, and he got all this information out of him in like 2 seconds, and it was really, really cool. And that was one of the highlights of the season for me, was Michael questioning Carlo and just thinking like, wow, he just did what he was supposed to do the whole season in like 10 minutes in this episode. And then in the finale, he has to go to court, and for some reason he helps Eugene, and he admits to doing all this bad stuff, and then he goes back to prison. And it's like, wow, you almost could have cut Michael out of this whole season. Like, a lot of the stuff that happened this season, it really doesn't even matter. Because in the finale, all that they really acted like mattered was Eugene. So, I gotta say, I think, as well as the pacing, I think the biggest issue with this season was the role of Michael, the main character. It was really up and down, and it really didn't feel like it went anywhere interesting except for the episodes about his wife's death, where he investigates that. And by the way, I haven't even talked about Charlie, because they'll just have these characters play prominently into a story, and then they'll just drop off the face of the universe like they don't matter anymore. And Mayor Charlie is one of them, where he is like Michael's best friend, and we see their relationship is really strong, and we also see that the mayor is very corrupt and he's very evil, and he's really, really he is full on corrupt to the point of where he is almost even worse than Jimmy in terms of being like a gangster. And they focus a lot on that relationship, because then we find out that he might possibly be responsible for Michael's wife's death. And there's this incredible scene in episode 7, which the whole episode was incredible, but this one incredible scene happened where Michael confronts Charlie, and he says, you didn't have anything to do with that, did you? And it felt like a boiling scene, where things are bubbling up. It's getting to that boiling point where it's going to boil over and spill all over everything. And then he leaves, and it's like, oh shit, I can't wait to see what happens next. I can't wait to see how this relationship between Michael and Charlie goes from here. Oh, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere at all. That whole thing with Charlie just kind of drops off. Charlie, he just becomes another person who helps Olivia a little bit, but then he doesn't even do anything useful himself. because then Jimmy backs out of this deal and he doesn't give an F. So that whole, I would say another big issue with this season was the whole storyline with Charlie. I felt like it was really, really good. And it was really good until that episode 7. And then after that, they just kind of dropped it. And I felt like that was a huge mistake. They should not have done that, because it shows that, like, oh, you didn't have a plan? Like, there wasn't going to be anything that was going to happen after that with them? Like, that's kind of stupid. So, let's see. Well, then, in general, I would also say, too, the character of Olivia was complete trash. In every episode, it was very cartoony. She would come on and say she wants Michael to do something for her. He would say F you, and then at one point he actually says F you literally, and she's not a very interesting character, because she never really does much of anything herself, and she never really gets anything accomplished except for by pure luck or coincidence. You know, the just luck, the fact that Michael helped out Eugene and connected the Baxter family to Eugene's family's death. None of that was because of Olivia, you know. So I just feel like Olivia as a whole this season, she was really, really weak. Which was unfortunate, because in the first episode it felt like she was going to play a big role into the season, and she was going to be like the main villain in Michael's world. You know, in season 1, he did all this illegal stuff to cover up what his son did, and it was very uncomfortable for him to do, because he knew it was all wrong. He knew it was all stuff that he shouldn't have done at all, but he had to protect his son. In season 2, I thought that Olivia was going to be that character who pushed him into doing things that he didn't want to do. And she didn't. I mean, she really didn't almost at all. It just really, really... Her character was trash. There was also a relationship between Jimmy and Michael that was kind of interesting, because it seemed like they got to interact a lot more this season. However, that didn't really go anywhere at all interesting. I'm sorry, it really didn't. So overall, season 2, it was a mixed bag, and it was something that I'm glad that we got, because I really loved and enjoyed the majority of the season. You know, most of my criticisms, by the way, all of them could have been fixed if the finale wasn't complete trash. You know, all of them could have been fixed if they had just resolved these things in different ways in the finale. But the finale takes this complete left turn where it feels like it was written by somebody who didn't write the rest of the season. And, sorry, a trailer for Dungeons and Dragons just popped up. I can't wait to review that piece of crap. God, it looks terrible. Oh, God. Lay's chips, too? Oh, what a joke. This finale, it took such a left turn. You know, even with Season 1's finale, it still felt like everything was leading up to that. You know, it was all about how everyone found out that Michael was bad, everyone found out that he was a liar, and then the whole stuff with Eugene. Everything in Season 1 at least felt like it led up to that. All the stuff that happened at the end of Season 2 did not feel like it was the stuff that we were leading up to. So that's why the ending of Season 2 was so disappointing, was because it felt like such a giant left turn. I think that I am going to, and now I'm going to rate the season in terms of food, because now that I've gotten to the finale, I don't really want to talk about the show anymore. So sorry, the finale is really that bad. I would say that Your Honor Season 2 is like a really good bowl of macaroni and cheese, which is exactly what I just ate. But as good as it is kind of boring, it is kind of mundane. You're just eating noodles and cheese. And then at the end, it feels like, okay, is there going to be anything interesting at the bottom? Because maybe at the bottom there's more cheese and there's more, stuff with the noodles. Like, because the noodles on top, they can sometimes be kind of drier and they can have less sauce and things. But then what happens? You drop the macaroni and cheese on the floor. And that is the finale of Season 2 of Your Honor. You drop the finale on the floor, and you don't want to eat any of that crap. So that is Season 2 of Your Honor. That is my review. I know that it sounded like I was being very critical, but I don't really care. I mean, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to, critique and say, like, honestly, this is what I felt about the season, pulling back from everything and looking back from a wider lens. And a lot of it is because I was giving them the benefit of the doubt throughout the season that these stories would pay off and that they would go somewhere interesting, and instead, of course, in the finale, they just go to complete trash. So I hope there is a Season 3 to rectify the terrible decisions made in the Season 2 finale. But if there isn't, then that's fine too, because Season 2 was a huge improvement, and it really felt like they took the season seriously, even though there were a lot of fumbles along the way. So please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought about Season 2, and then please subscribe if you'd like to see more honest TV show reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.